Well, so, Sheik.
We got the good incense in the air. I don't know, like I say, the meditation music is in the background, but I don't know how well those who listening in can hear. Like I said, we won't be doing video this lecture, but we'll try to do it for the next one, and won't try to hold it off too long. You know, we kind of took a break on the lectures because there's a lot of things that we have to set up for our school system. You know, how we're going to actually host the classes that we're setting up as far as, you know, tackling the curriculum, you know, the staffing situation in the background, and also, you know, the building and drafting up, you know, the economical part and the, you know, the finances for everything that we're going to be doing. A lot of that work is pretty much been, you know, been attached for us. But, you know, we begin all things first by using divine love. And for those who are watching from the video, you should see one of our holy scriptures on your screen, which is the book of Revelations. And we're going to open with a prayer from our Holy Tabernacle Ministry, or Holy Templets Ministry. As I mentioned, begin all things, prayers and thinking by using El Kalum, the all. O Heavenly One, the Most High, who is sustainer of all the worlds, we do accept the duty you have laid on us to clean up the filth made by the West and its non-submitting fools. O our sustainer, we beseech you to keep your hand over us, to control the strings of the courses of our lives, our sustainer. If we do wrong, please show thy divine blessings and forgiveness on us. You are the only one that can raise us true followers of the news bearers. In thy name, we carry on. We let this be an anthem for all, as you should see on the scroll as we scroll down. I'll leave the personal note on the screen as I continue to move forward with the lecture. And like I said, the lecture tonight is pretty much about biblical equity. And if you have your Bibles and things like that, like I said, your pen's pad, you want to bring that with you or have that close by, or you can take notes on the computer, your iPad, whatever it is. We're going to go over, like I said, the sacredness of equity and, you know, what it means truly, value and communionship, I'm sorry, and the power of group economics. And the reason why we have the structure the way we have when it comes to religious organizations. First verse that I want people to kind of pay attention to is from James 4:13 through 14. And it says, "Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year, and buy and sell and get gain. Sorry. Whereas you know not what shall be on the tomorrow. For what is your life? Even if a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away." Pretty much what that's saying is, for those that say that they're going to go do this or go do that, what the scripture is saying, I'll pull up the other versions for it. That's James 4:13 through 14 for anybody that's trying to follow along. So another rendition of it says, I'm going to read it while we pull this up. Different level. Okay. Now listen, you who say or tomorrow to this, and this is the New International Version, by the way. Today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Verse 14 says, okay, verse 14 says, "Why do you not even know what happens tomorrow? What is your life? Are you a mist that appears while then vanishes?" I'm going to share that with everybody. So, as you can see, like I just said, that pretty much mapping out a plan that is not grounded in God or the Most High. This is what this scripture leaves us off on. And like I said, tonight I want to lead off talking about the sacredness of equity or biblical equity, whatever you want to call it. But
like an investment in faith.
And as my diplomat just said, pretty much discussing your investment in your own faith, or in the faith in God, or your faith in God. So, you know, as we see from the verse, you know, it says, now listen, you who say today or tomorrow. So it doesn't matter if you're talking about right now or tomorrow, that you will go do this or that, this city, that city, carry on this business and make this money. All these ideals are just vain thoughts. So let's take that in the retrospect with all of these prosperity teachers that we have. You know, a motivational speaker cannot be put in the same bowl, right? But a lot of people prefer to go to motivational speakers before they go to a spiritual minister for their motivation, so to speak, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, Joel Osteen, you know, as much as people would like to believe that he's a preacher or a minister or whatever he likes to claim to be, actually, he doesn't even claim that. He tells everybody that he's just a motivational speaker. That's
right, right. So, this scripture starting off is real heavy for those who could key in and really want to know the sacredness behind the equity or the value of equity, or the value that you invest in your faith, the equity that you invest in your faith. And as I touched on that, Spirit says this is just a reminder of earlier scriptural premises that you know, have been conveyed to the people, whether they believe these stories or not, or they treat them as allegorical messages. Whatever your angle may be, the principle still remains the same, and the lesson that comes out of it technically still remains the same. So, Spirit says touch on Cain and Abel, because as we look, we see that same principle where Cain chose to do this violent act towards his brother, and this was in the name of material gain, and also about being chosen of God based off of the value and equity that you put into the choices that you make for God. Because the issue that happened with Cain and Abel, or Gabriy'El, is God chose Abel over Cain, or the offering that was made by Abel over Cain, due to the fact that Abel put his heart's equity, or sacred equity, into the work that he was offering to the gods. So, Spirit says touch on that. Now I want to lead us into Ecclesiastes 7:12. we see, for those who could see on their screen what we have up, verse 12 says, wisdom is a shelter as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. So this, once again, takes you to the principle of the value or the equity, which can be sentimental, which a lot of people miss when it comes into property ownership and, you know, these courts and the things that the court system is doing out here. We live in a secular-based society, so this could be changed through us applying these particular principles and lessons that we're talking about today, and actually taking awareness and heed to the scriptures that follow along with placing that value of equity into yourself and to the faith and into the Most High.
The equity that I'm seeing nowadays, people are giving, is basically the 9 to 5 that has us trapped today. That we're teaching, we're teaching our children from the beginning. Not saying that working is bad, but a wise person would invest more time in themselves, or at least building themselves and their house and their families, rather than squandering their time, helping somebody else build theirs, unless it's beneficial in both parties. Then it's totally comprehensible. But the way this society is right now, I can definitely see how it's kind of one-way
street. And that leads us to verse 13, which says, consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this: God has made the one as well as the other, meaning the good times and your bad times. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. In this meaningless life of mine, I have sent both of these, the perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. So this is essentially talking about keeping the balance. And that's technically also what equity is about, because one of the principles or a maximum of equity is equity follows fairness, or equity is fairness, which there are legal maximums that were put together by biblical scholars and jurists who are studied in the canonical law and ecclesiastical law, who came together, these 72 scholars and teachers that we know to be Jews, to come together and put together these doctrines of law that pretty much changed our interpretation, understanding, and role in the whole structure of life of things when it comes to following the laws of God and following the path of God, to where we could achieve those goals and or reach those jewels that may be needed, or tools that we have laying dormant within us, and also for us in our futures and our next lifetimes. But the core principle of what this just touched on from James 4:13 is the fact that you should not be worried about tomorrow, yesterday, and we know this is one of the main teachings that we'll touch on, that the Messiah Yahshua HaMashiach, or Paharu Masur, or Krishna, the Mutajessid or avatar. Mutajessid is Arabic for avatar. So the thing is, these lessons are intertwined, and you'll see as we continue to go forward that this is pretty much that same balance that shows up in the principles of equity that the Messiah and other, notably great scholars have talked about throughout the time. And a lot of people that are involved in teaching us as a people, from whatever religious background it may be, they're not used to actually giving us a full quantum of teachings, which us as a people we need to day and day and time, so we can increase in our proverbs. Proverbs meaning pro and verb. So verb means a action or an action word, and pro means a positive. So that would be a positive action that would be getting expressed or conveyed, shown through action and intent. So I want us to turn to Proverbs 13:22, which will take us even further in our message. I'm pulling it up on the screen for those who will be watching from their screens. As it says, Proverbs 13:22, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, and a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. This is a heavy boatload for those who are trying to understand the situation that they are in when it comes to us as a Nubian people, and the fact that we have been technically in bondage through the system of white supremacy and other political means that have pretty much been against all peoples. So, as you see, it says a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. So, automatically, Spirit says, touch on Book of Psalms, chapter 82, which also goes along with this message, because in the beginning it says, verse 1 of chapter 82, Book of Psalms, is God walked amongst the congregation of the gods. And later on in the verse, God, or that particular God, was told to judge amongst the congregation and asked, why do the other gods or judges judge so unjustly amongst the people of Meek? Which, if you can see, this is still going back to not a race thing, but a monetary value thing. Equity. And today's biggest issue is our equity, our restitution as a people. And technically not as just one people. I was asked this the other day by someone on my social media, Facebook, I think. Don't echo. He pretty much said, isn't asking for restitution for black people or so-called black people, African Americans, Moorish people, whatever you want to call them. He said, isn't it not asking for more war amongst them? Or amongst, I'm sorry, not amongst them, but amongst the people in the entire planet. And that struck me as odd, which we all know or should, majority of the people in our congregation by now, to have a clue where this type of mentality comes from. And it's not to categorize it per se, because that's the thing to do nowadays, is destroy people through labels. But the mentality of those who follow the philosophy of white supremacy and the political premises that come with it. So, we all know self-preservation is the first law of nature. So, like I said, I'm not going to go and attack them per se, but we know, like I said, where this mentality comes from. The person, while he was discussing with me his point of view, he technically did not know, how this aligned up psychologically with people who have what's called an affinity for being gathered together off the premises of hate, whether it's social hate, racial hate, economic hate, etc., etc. But the fact of the matter is that he missed a lot of things in between the fact of stating that, it would be a problem if African Americans or people of melanated or Nubian descent, Moorish descent, begin to ask for restitution or reparations. And that's only due to a mindset of wanting to protect everybody on one end, but on another, when you have been able to benefit off the prescription of someone else's property, equity and value that does not belong to you, that is a vanity. And legally, it's the law of papyrus. It doesn't even belong to you. Merchant law explains that real well for those who are legal jurists and studiers of the law. Sorry. So that lets me know where this guy's mindset was, pretty much. Because the fact of the matter is that these people who follow this premises or philosophy have been benefiting for the past hundreds, and for some, to them, it's thousands of years. And it's been based off of legendary landmarks, legendary mechanical property, intellectual property, and the forms of property could go on. But one that is real key that I'm touching on tonight is biblical equity or sacred equity. So that touches on sentimental values of things. And like I said, it was a numerous of things that got skipped over. And this is typically what's going on with all things of the material realm or the physical realm, or inventions and plans and procedures that are going about, whether they are in the idealism form or they're actually in the physical movement and expression of it. Piggybacking off of James 4:13, which just told us we shouldn't be worried about tomorrow, this, that, etc., right? The guy was pretty much making his own personal projection of what would come about if African Americans or Moorish people or Nubian people or indigenous people, period, were to receive reparations or restitution. And me understanding the mindset was not just a personal projection, but also a part of the natural law and science of understanding that the fact that each particular ethnicity, which is different than a race, races and ethnicities are different, are different organisms within themselves. So this particular projection was not something that just represented this one individual's conscious way of thinking. What was actually being projected was the fear that has been expressed by more than one advocate of that particular opinion of thought. And legally, which is how I'm going to deal with it, we give validation to legal opinion more so than lawful facts or lawful maxims, which are your equitable maximums and your canonical maxims, which are ancient laws and ancient principles that are irrefutable and are consistent everywhere you turn. Now, the law of prescription goes into hand when we're talking about the sovereignty of a people. And this sovereignty it holds strong with the trust, equitable value that we're talking about putting into your faith and your faith that you have into the Most High, the All, El Kalum, whatever it is that you want to call the All in All, or the Divine. And we'll go over that another time, but I want to say that, or say this shortly in between that. A lot of our people have to make a clear distinction between the gods that they're giving energy to and the divine presence of the All. Because a lot of people, when we make reference and we just talk about saying God, we miss the fact that there are many gods. And as I just mentioned about Psalms, the book of Psalms, chapter 80, verse 1. Chapter 82, I'm sorry, verse 1. There are well-known many gods. So I want to hum in on that I'm talking about specifically the Most High, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the source, the creator, the all in all, El Kalum, or Patimta, which are the many different variants of saying and expressing the name for the all, which is mentioned in the book of Corinthians as the all in all. So, touching on these key points, the fact of the matter is that we as a people were already pre-warned on both ends of what is taking place. Because we have to remember that as time has expressed the plan or prophecy of the particular people who decide to go against the true principles of God or the divine and kind of revert back into anti-nature laws or anti-nature ways of life. And now you have to go send a prophet down, the Most High, send an angel, whatever it may be, a messenger, a warner, to get these people back on track. And technically, what you're seeing is a trust book of minutes that happened between the spirit realm and the physical realm as these particular scribes and messengers, angels, etc., etc., stories get wrote about, or they get translated into other histories or interpolated into other histories. The sentimental value behind these things is what is being ignored when it comes to saying that what the guy was speaking about earlier, that it would actually cause strife for African Americans, indigenous people, etc., Aboriginal people, original people, to go and claim restitutions of their land and property. But in actuality, that goes with the same principle Yahshua HaMashiach was touching on, was saying, can Satan cast out Satan, when he was talking to various scholars, Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes that follow these anti-nature laws and anti-nature policies, or anti-God. They follow the laws of their king, who they call God incarnated on earth, or who would be their God incarnated on earth. Which is fine. Let's say we accept that. So, as I said, his mindset is not something that was just individually his. It is something that we could trace back through the ontological sources of time. So these verified historical records could be pulled up. In this day and age, we have Google, everything. We just don't have the book reference. It's encyclopedia and things like that. And you know, you got to be careful who you're getting your faith, your philosophy of faith from, because a lot of people don't have nothing invested in their faith. So his message or his questioning automatically let me know that he has no concern for the natural people of earth returning back to their natural state that they were once in before servitude, forced servitude, kidnap, bondage, and that things should continue to go on as they continue to go on with the rights of the people who are the sovereigns of the land and who are the actual true entitlement holders of the land, that should be acting as the actual executors in this particular equitable situation. Now, someone who doesn't have that particular authority to do so, they won't have the know-how neither. So, therefore, I didn't take his answer for face value. I left him with things to think on and ponder on, which they also come up in the next verse that we're going to read, which is 1 Timothy 5:8. And these principles are showing themselves in synchronicity over and over and over again. It was a lot of what I just learned on the past trips I've been taking. I've been traveling and trying to get things that our congregation needs to take us to the next level that we see ourselves as going, and the works that need to be done, the greater works that need to be done for the global humanity. And we don't want to have a big, big church building or, Joel Osteen type situation when we're actually working to help provide a actual futuristic foundation for our people, because as we watch and we know the revealing of today's times and the things that are being revealed, whether people agree that they are apocalyptic or not, things are being revealed that have been mentioned not just in the Bible, but the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, the Urinthia, and other, especially the Apocrypha and other numerous scriptures. So, 1 Timothy 5:8 says, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So, if we're going to keep things on an equal footing, and try to prevent world war between ethnicities, because that's what this guy's whole point was. How can we do so if we're keeping the people who are grafted along by nature with the earth? How long do they expect for them to prosper if they are the descendants of these original peoples who are technically their relatives? For they themselves to prosper in their own household. A lot of these ideological and philosophical mindsets that are touched on, they're divided within themselves as well. We know a house divided against itself cannot stand. So we either have faith in the source, in the Allahumma, which are the gods, the Elohim, the original gods, or, as it says in the scriptures, for the people of Israel, continue to follow false gods, foreign gods. This is where your equity lies when it comes to things of property. You see, it said, don't worry about your food, don't worry about your clothes, don't worry about these things, because they are already entrusted to you as a beneficiary of life just by living. So therefore, these necessities of life should be no issue for no one globally if we have a planet that is being directed and guided by people who claim to be pure at heart, which is what a lot of what Christianity is supposed to represent. Being Christ-like and following, and the divine love incarnates ways of expressing and living in a divine love commune and environment. Today's world, or dunya in Arabic, we know, as most say, is the playground of idleness, or some would like to say one of the fallen angels' name, Lucifer, playground. And partly we touched on that earlier, starting off with James 4:13 through 14, because idleness or idle-mindedness or idol worship could also be dealing with, I'm going to be planning to do this, I'm going to be planning to do that, we got to do this, we got to do that. If these plans, like I said, are not in alignment with the source of things, it's not going to happen anyway. So if it's not in alignment with the way nature works itself, it kind of throws people who's trying to be in that normal consciousness level of operation or operating, it kind of throws them into a whole nother loop, which is what we just talked about, the idle-mindedness and all being out of your mind and in the mind of someone else, or someone else is controlling your mind. And a lot of people don't get what that means when we say out of your mind. Someone else is controlling your mind. Something else is controlling your mind. Because we talk about this all the time. Your arms, your legs, your feet, these things called your body parts, they're going to let you know, your soul know, or your soul's going to let you know, it know, and it's going to let your soul know what you have been doing as a spirit here on this planet. And as it says, 1 Timothy 5:8, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So when Yahshua HaMashiach came to his people first, and his own receiveth him not, are we missing where our equity lies? If his own received him not, did they receive the equity? See, if we know Yahshua's mission was incomplete, did the people receive the equity? Or did it have to come later on down the line through another messenger or prophet? Yahshua himself said he would even possibly have to return, leave, and return. And so this is where, down through time, we start to see holy wars and different things like that based off this philosophical mindset that Yahshua is the redemption for everyone's equity on the planet. Because the concept of this debt system that we have today goes back to the Luciferian concept of being able to pay for your sins, to be expunged. And so now what could be done is people could commit crimes long as it's paid for, bonded. So through prescription, legally wise, your wealth, your assets could be taken, and it could be taken through prescription, and your assets could be captured through the fact of someone paid a solicitor who's bonded to go and turn over your property to someone who didn't earn the wages or the keep. Now, a lot of people don't understand the difference between servitude and kidnap, bondage, and slavery. Servitude has always been around. Plenty of people, especially the people that we're making reference to in these particular sacred texts and holy texts, these people are workers of the trade, whether it was the trade in ministering, being a scribe, your medicine, so-called medicine man and medicine woman. Your same typical things that we have today, transportation, your doctors, your lawyers, your politicians. This indemnity only works if we see, as we're reading, if it comes through the Most High. That indemnity is given to you, trust. As a beneficiary. And also for certain things, when you go out and act as a trustee or a steward of the divine. We see this now in today's actions with our current events with the Federal Reserve. For the past 2 months, or for the past month, they have been dumping money behind the scenes with the banks because the banks have been running out of money at night and have been needing to go to the Federal Reserve window. Past September, the bonds was up for the U.S., meaning when each country or nation pretty much needs to have funds to operate as a government, they go to their primary lenders who will loan them money, funds, and we all know by now that most of these people are international bankers, and some of the people that we were just mentioning when it comes to this anti-nature philosophy, etc., etc. Now, not all globalists have a anti-nature philosophy. But we know this is typically where the United States is getting its funds from, and from a particular network of people. And now the situation has been where America and our leaders that we put in charge, so-called leaders, they have pretty much ran the financial system through a muck with the Federal Reserve and the history of its continuation of, playing the guessing game with the people in our economy. A lot of people do not understand that this is not a conspiracy theory when we say in the 1930s our financial economy changed from a fixed standard to a floating standard. And we changed from the federal gold standard. Even though that was not as different as the gold standard was, this new floating currency system, the gold standard still had crashes and things like that, and was still lacking the mathematical scale to secure the ledger that we could pretty much do today with Bitcoin and other copies of what Bitcoin is able to do by actually mastering the double ledgering system with accounting. The free floating system is pretty much the same thing that we're talking about now, as far as the idle-mindedness of, not being in alignment with the Most High, not being in alignment with nature, the divine, and the people as a whole. Bankers pretty much have been in a panic, and we all know that the bond grade, like I just mentioned, is dropped with the U.S. Treasury. So the U.S. pretty much has to figure out where they're going to get their funds from. And ADOS is trying to get restitution from a people who do not have any currency that is actually of real value or real use. ADOS is the leading African American organization that has been attempting to go for restitution or reparations. We describe it as what it actually is, which is restitution, what it should be. They have been attempting to gather restitution from a collapsing house. There are organizations that have been around that we did not go back and give a positive hand to. We have more counterintelligence than ever when it comes to indigenous organizations, melanated organizations, and organizations that are actually standing there in line to do positive good for humanity. Everyone's pretty much at the same standstill with needing value, needing equity, and needing money. Whether you need money to do your humanitarian projects, whether you need money to do, your philanthropy work in the neighborhood, a lot of people just need day-to-day living money for wages and the necessities that should not be above the cost of what we need, or the should not be above the wages that we work for. I'm sorry, and is due to the fact that we was given this opportunity to give our government the opportunity to step in and take care of these fiduciary obligations, because most of these things are paid for automatically. You're paying for things twice. You could be paying for them 3 or 4 different times if they wanted you to, which they do make you do in some instances when you're paying for a car, real estate, etc., etc. The bond, the promissory note, that was an investment contract that you gave to the person that you bought your car from, to the bank you bought your house from. These are investment contracts where they're using the principle that you created to cash out and monetize on the back end, and you see nothing from it. This is why we have a overly wicked planet, economy, economical environment. This is why those who see the things that they see happening in the way it is. A lot of people are in denial, and this is due to the fact that they are not in alignment. They do not have the spiritual value stored up. The scriptures store up your treasures for heaven. Well, we went through cycles of time, and this is what the revealing that's spoken about and mentioned, and a lot of scholars do not like to touch on these last 2 books of the Old Testament and the New Testament. We went from one cycle of time, now we're in another cycle of time. This cycle of time that we're into has been described as a golden era. And like we just mentioned, Matthew 6:25, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not your life more than food, and the body more than the clothes? This kingdom where there will be no worrying, no crying. How can we develop this on top of something that's already in a decomposing position? America's on the decline. It's on its dying stages. Pretty much they have the people of America all divided, whether it's religious, sexual, political, social, technological. The children don't interact with the parents don't interact with the children. There's no more community gathering. It's even because and the situations are being felt even through indigenous communities that have access to these technologies. It's more so of the equity that we have been given from this kingdom of lies. To where we have to worry about what we're going to eat tomorrow. You have to worry about where you're going to sleep. But if we was all operating under the natural divine kingdom and the trust that comes with that, it's a trust constitution that comes with that. Just like a family trust estate. A kingdom is made up of royal families and estates. Or empires are made up of estates of royal families and tribes. What is your clue for those who are a part of the royalty? Well, if we see that the avatar is specifically noted as someone who's related to the divine source, and he has this spirit, this soul flowing through him, and these were the people that was appointed to be your leaders and your prophets in the times of old, then what would be the things now if that particular prophet only came to affirm the law of those old particular prophets or ancient prophets? And those ancient prophets affirm the prophets that came from the stars and to and fro. So therefore, your royalty will be found in these royal families and peoples who came and who have been aggrandized through the divine trust, contract, covenant, agreement. We don't have to repeat these lectures over and over and over again. Somebody could listen and get the keys, take these keys and open up many doors. Because what I try to do when I give the lecture is speak slow, gracefully, and hand the master key for whatever it is that we're discussing to that person. And with one key, they can open up many doors. So if I give them this key of life, and we speak life in every message, they will be able to take that key and open up many doors versus good information that they're getting versus this right information, right knowledge, right wisdom, and can open up many doors. It would also motivate them to seek, ask, and knock on other doors. Well, they won't even have to knock because they got the key. So I want us to pull up Luke 8:21 so I can go ahead and close out and affirm for everyone that the Pharisees and scholars who were watching Yahshua teach and questioning his teachings, they didn't understand the peculiar way to go, because for those who are inside the kingdom see these particular mysteries and be demystified for them. But those who are outside the kingdom of God will still continue on learning by the metaphorical teachings versus the literal. So therefore, as I say, those who are in the world congregation in the kingdom of heaven, in the kingdom of God, the kingdom of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, they will receive the literal knowledge and understanding. They don't necessarily have to come to every meeting Friday or Kupa Friday or newcomers class on Sunday. You know, they may gravitate over into our classes in our actual school that we have, degrees that we have for everyone that's seeking, either whether they're a minister or becoming a spiritual guide for the people of whatever faith. And the ministerial work doesn't necessarily have to always be the preaching, whatever it is, or teaching. There's many different ways to work on behalf of the Most High. Not everyone has to be a teacher. There's many ways to make grow what is being developed in this particular day and time. We have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, action number 27655, to come together as a global congregation and establish global partnerships to end world poverty and meet these goals. We have the actual project and plan to come together and end this spell of idleness that has engulfed the entire planet through the Bretton Woods Agreement and this floating monetary system that we have had that has pretty much destroyed nations of people and nations of families. It is even destroying the concept that goes behind the economic formula for that particular denominated script called the dollar is destroying our planet. And if we let they fool butts go to Mars, what you think that's going to do? We have to deal with another 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years of destruction, and destruction from within out of from our planet to our solar system. This is not me giving astrology. No. This is things that are well proven by astronomers and other well-known astrophysical scholars. A lot of people are not seeing the signs before their faces. This past year, the Pope has called for a one-world religious government. Donald Trump has commanded a space force last year, and going into this year, they're talking about going to Mars and funding the billionaires who like to send rockets out of space, right? There's been global strikes and protests that people are totally out of the loop with. We have people in tune with everything else due to the division. Versus what is actually going on right now in politics and with our economy and ecology. And things like this would usually get the people's attention. But people have been played with, which is true, by big business and corporatocracy participants in the power of utilizing people's sincerity against them. Real truth and turning them into lies, which is the action and well-known documented actions of jinns, demons, ghouls, whatever you want to call these disembodied ghosts, spirits, etc., etc. Now, we miss all of these things from the fires, the forest fires that are happening in Brazil, in Africa, Sudan, the constant war, the fact that we still have slavery going on in our international lands and waters. And no one's paying attention to the opportunity that's being given to them to step up now and be a voice heard in our national conversation, our international conversation, and now was presenting itself with us, me as a world leader, as the world chaplain, on a world stage. We have the technology to reach millions of people across the world in less than no time. We have to reflect on the fact that the equity that we put in is the equity that we get out. And so, for me, the work that I've done, I try to show this is what needs to be done so we could see the solution. Not just me tell it to you, explain it to you, and even teach it. We have many great teachers. A lot of these things do not need to be taught over again. But another way of learning, and to know that you know what you really know, you have to put it into application. So for those that are done playing with Kitty World, good information, and you need the right information, the right knowledge, and the right wisdom, the right connections. We have it here for you at the World Congregation, the World Temple, the Omniversal Church. You can visit us at http://holytemples.org or holytemples.org. You can always contact me on my Facebook, social media, however you need to reach me. It's World Temple on Facebook. We pull up with the 8-point star, says World Temple in the middle. You can send us a message. Send us a message on our Instagram at World Templets. There's many different ways to reach us. Schedule a one-on-one consultation with me or any one of our departments that we have. We're structuring many different things, and we've been transparent about it as we go and continue to build, whether it's financial systems, legal systems, education systems, political systems. The list goes on. Agricultural. The list goes on. So we need people of the world who is breaking out of the idle-minded well and the well of idle-mindedness to step in to the sanctuary and bring the jewels, the tools, and the good, great news that we give, which is this supreme knowledge, which is simply your sacred equity that belongs to each and every person on the planet. You can take this back to them, those who are having a hard time understanding, who don't have a spiritual home, or are trying to find their spiritual home, or sitting in a home and know and feel they don't belong. Like I said, I don't do these lectures on a week-to-week basis for the simple fact that there's plenty of work that has to get done, and we can go through numbers and numbers and numbers of scriptures, verses, chapters, books, but is it going to get the actual bloody work of the spirit that needs to be done? The work is bloody. And the reason why I say that is because of a lecture that I heard given by Pastor T.D. Jakes himself when he was talking about putting in the work for God and your faith. This fighting to sustain yourself, it's a vanity. The fighting that we do on a day-to-day basis that has a positive result is a vanity. We should not be debating or probating with one another, or you'll be probated on or debated with. So if we probate with each other on these particular situations, benefit with one another, each one teach one, we will see rapidly the kingdom of peace, tranquility, transcendental, positive transcendental environments and ecologies. Not necessarily these draconian concepts of transcendental and going beyond, which still leaves you stuck in that particular idle world, not seeing past the threshold and being able to participate in the spiritual realm of nature. Because you could be sitting right next to whoever it is that you're sitting next to, and nothing manifests or nothing comes to fruition because y'all are not in the same realm. The work that gets done with the people who are around me and the work that we do that does come to fruition is because we are operating from the same realm. The more people who wake up to their divine reality and be the divine reality that is, we'll see a global change. We will have a global change. So, if you have to reach me, it's an emergency. Just know I'll be busy. I do a lot of work for us and the whole congregation as a whole. We're working on making a lot of plans of different things right now. Traveling, I'll be back on the road again soon. More books will be coming. Codexes, legal documentation. We need help with people who know about trust, financing, insurance, accounting, etc. Economics, because right now we're establishing credit unions and tribal banks for different people. The banking system, we're getting involved with that, and a lot of different things that are going to be facilitating the global change and the global reset that we are now upon. But I'm going to leave y'all with that, and see you next time. True peace.
Damn, bro.